And then I'm going to show you the resources that we have. And then if you even want me to come in sometime and give you a break and do like a co-teach or teach one of these lessons or teach one of the classroom activities, I would love to do that for you, because I know sometimes we all just need a break.
Well, and it's also nice to see someone else and how they present something, and you get some great ideas by watching other people teach.
Yes, we do. That's absolutely right. So I'm going to put this in the chat. So this is our, I think you saw this before, but I added some new stuff to it. It's basically just where I house all the Savvas Pearson things. And if we scroll down, I'll just show you this and you can look at it later. But there is a Savvas YouTube channel now where they have videos for the how-to of what we'll talk about. But I put some of the big ones down here and I show examples of how to do it. So I was all in with Savvas when it first came to Fayette County. We started with the 9 through 12, and I just thought it's a new book. I'm at a new school and we were one-to-one at the time. So I thought I'm just going to assign examples. And if I find something, like sometimes at the beginning, I'll really like those kind of discussion questions, the explorer questions that they have at the beginning of a lesson. Once in a while, I think, hey, there's one that I could maybe get my students hooked. I love a good video hook as well. So sometimes those will have videos in them, but a lot of times they won't. But there's always YouTube. So I'll like see what they have in there. That's kind of the example. And then I'll go out and find a YouTube video and show just a small clip just to get them kind of hooked in with videos. So it's not a 3-act math kind of thing, but actually I'll send you to, I love the right questioning technique, which is it's piloted by the Right Question Institute. And we had these people come from KDE who talked about how the student should come up with questions to a prompt when you're starting new material. And once they came, I did it all the time. And my regular geometry kids, who I had such an issue with being engaged, like you're talking about, really getting them to do any kind of work whatsoever, they were like monsters. And so when I started doing that, when I started showing small videos and then said, hey, what questions do you have about that? Or showing them an image that kind of tied into a real life application of what we were doing, that really got them involved. So I'll send you that a link for that as well.
And you said that's called the Right
Question Technique. Yeah, the RQT. And so I don't know if I put that in here. I need to put that in here, but it's there's a whole like procedure you can do with it, like, and it leads you step by step, which is great. But literally, it's really just finding a engaging video clip that either you find on the YouTube, or you could even have some of your students create a video that you show to the rest of the class. I'm all about getting in the student-centered creations, but it really worked. And then they first sit, they watch the video, and you showed a few times. Then you say, what questions do you have? And all of the students write down, like individually, they write down 3 of their top questions. Then you put them in groups and they all come up with 3 of the top questions for the group. So you will have some that overlap, but sometimes you won't, but they have to come up with the 3 top. Then I had them put it like either on a Google slide or a Jamboard, or even like on a big Post-it. And I would stick them all over the classroom and leave them there while we went through the lesson. And they, you had like the ones that's like, why are we watching this in geometry? Or why, or why is that color this way? And some that weren't math related, but a lot of them were, like, so that you could answer those questions as you went on through the lesson. And it really kind of gives them the authority to be a part of that learning. And so, and get their questions answered. So it was, I loved it. So we just had big Post-its all over the room. I like the Post-its because it was a visual and it's not something they had to go find later on the internet, so you could use technology for the individual questions and then, have them share on a Google Doc and then print them out, later on your printer or whatever. But it basically that's it. And then you just answer them as you go, and students can answer them. You could start right then. Who can answer this question or answer some of these questions? You could have them go up, but it's a really great. I always struggled with questioning. It was always part of my PGP. And so that year I used that next year, because this is in the middle of the year when I learned about it, I used that as my PGP, use that for the beginning of every new topic, to get them hooked on the learning. So I'll send that link to you. But anyway, but so those kind of things, when I can find them in that Savvas online curriculum, I like. And so I create a playlist of like examples, especially the ones that have the Desmos embedded graphing calculator, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, because I want them to have practice on their Chromebooks with the Desmos graphing calculator. And then I'll show you some other things with the graphing calculator as well, where we can kind of go out in another place and look at how you can use the graphing calculator for assessment and engagement. But everything on here will kind of show you, if you don't know how to, it's basically the how-to. So if you don't know how to assign a Math Excel or you want to customize it, a couple new things that we've talked about in the past year is making a library. And so this is where you can house everything that you assign, so you can use it next year. So if you find like specific things and you want to remember those, you can put them in your library, and you can even share them with other teachers that might be in your PLC or whatever in your team. And then this will show you how to assign a playlist. The big warning I always tell people is don't include your Math Excel homework in the playlist itself, because when a student does a playlist item that's like an example, it just gives them 100% for submitting it, and they don't really have to do anything with the example. And so then it gives them 100. Well, then it takes all those 100s and it averages in your Math Excel, and so that's it's a fake stat. It's fake news, because then you're not getting what they actually got on the homework. So I always say to assign a playlist separate if you want to include some examples or one of those prompts, or you're doing a 3 acts and you want to also include some other things that are in there, you can do the playlist, but don't do the Math Excel with it. And then you can actually look at pulling in things from other curriculum. This is new this year. And I had a teacher just ask me about that the other day, so I put that in there. And if you're using a Google Classroom, we actually have that integration right now, but we don't have the Canvas integration just yet. But I am going to love the day when we can just integrate that into Canvas. But we're working on it. So it's really the two of them fighting against each other. It doesn't have anything to do with us, but it's good stuff. So so this is just kind of the how-to of kind of just keeping you more organized and helpful as a teacher. But also I'm a huge fan of the Math Excels, because you can do mastery for those and it'll assign them remediation. You can go in and see their progress even better than you could before. So that's all there too. So in terms of engagement though, with using that Desmos graphing calculator, because we want them to also be able to use it when it comes to our state assessments, MAP, when you're teaching in the middle schools and elementary schools, but also for ACT and K-Prep, those big assessments that'll come up that I don't like to talk about, but Yeah, it's all in there too. And it's a nice equitable calculator. I think that's why I like it the most, is that it's free and it's also equitable because everyone has it. So um, let me go out.
They can use the Desmos calculator on state testing and
It is actually the state testing and map testing is a Savvas product. So it is embedded in the test itself. So you don't even have to worry about them going out to a different site or whatever. Yeah. So they'll be in a lockdown browser.
Yeah, I seem to remember that about the state testing now that you mention it. I didn't realize that. And we just took map they don't get a calculator for every question.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it'll give them,
do.
Yeah. And sometimes it'll give them a scientific, usually for the younger students, they won't give them a graphing calculator just yet, but it'll give them the scientific one. Let me see if I can find the graph there. There's the graphing calculator. So this is some fun stuff I think you might like, especially if you're trying to get your students engaged, more engaged. Let me copy this link for you and stick it in the chat. So last year we had with online, I had a lot of teachers that asked for something that would help their students kind of get ready for those state assessments. And so we came up with a little scavenger hunt ideas where, maybe on a Friday or, come in after a long break and they need to get back into things, you can have them play around with the graphing calculator. Especially if you're teaching Algebra 1. This roller coaster challenge is an Algebra 2 one, but this one would be great. I think for Algebra 1, we could change up a few of the graphs in there to make it more Algebra 1-ish and take the Algebra 2 away. But what it is basically a slide deck that they copy, or you can force a copy for them. And then they go and they do the challenge in the graphing calculator, and then they take a screenshot of it and put it into, or they can literally just paste the link into the slide deck. And then you can paste the slide deck in your Google Classroom. You make it an assignment and they can work on it that way. They're kind of fun challenges. This is a little link to it. But if you want me to make one specific for your class or specific for a topic, we can do that too. I think it's, especially for Algebra 1, you want them to get those skills without a calculator, but once you've kind of gotten 80% of our students up to where they need to be, then the graphing calculator is a great option for them to start kind of taking it further. And so it's slow at the McGrath house today, but it has directions. It's all student centered, so you can go through it with them or they can go through it. It shows them all the steps and has little videos for them to watch about how to take a screenshot on their Chromebook and insert into the slides. And then what you'll see is it'll have like graph the function. They can click the Desmos link. Here, it'll take them out to the graphing calculator, and then they just paste it in right here. So they play around with points. I think points would be great, like just graphing points on the calculator, making a table. Again, if you don't want to get into quadratics, we can easily change that. This is some inequalities. We could even put in some line graphs in there with inequalities and shading. This was forming a square. So, and then a little challenge with a smiley face. So they're not too difficult, but we could make one for your students if you have an idea for that. And then this one was a roller coaster one down here, roller coaster challenge at the end. This one was for statistics, which they don't get a whole lot of. It's usually something when we're doing the big rocks, we don't hit statistics, but that can be a really fun activity, especially where you could tie it in with graphing trends or trends that they see in the world. And there's some of those in the Savvas curriculum. They talk about trends and regression lines in Algebra 1. So there's one of those in there to just kind of play around with that. So that can be kind of an engaging activity for them. The calculator itself you can use for them to take screenshots. Desmos has a great art challenge where they can make their own picture, which does incorporate standards. People say, oh, you're going to make me do art, but it does really incorporate standards there. And then for, we also have the Desmos in the Savvas curriculum. So that's the graphing calculator part. And I'll show you a few features of that graphing calculator too. But we also have a ton of classroom activities. And we have maps for you. There's the scavenger hunt again. We have maps for you. So if you're teaching Algebra 1, we've got stuff for middle school too. I think I put it on there. I got to find it. But like for topics 1 and 2, you can click on this link. It'll take you out to a document that has exactly the examples where Savvas is using the graphing calculator online. So once you get them, that's a great way to get them used to the graphing calculator to start, or do some of these activities in the scavenger hunts there. And then when they come in, they're like, oh, there's the graphing calculator. Yeah. So, so you'll see this embedded Desmos column here by topic, where it actually shows the use of the graphing calculator. And those are great. Those are great investigating ones. It's not a classroom activity, but it's a great, they're never like just, when they put the Desmos graphing calculator in there, it always is a questioning example. It's never like, well, here's the calculator, and now we're going to tell you. It'll tell you eventually, but it does do a good job with letting the student manipulate what it has in that calculator there. So, and then one thing I highly recommend is, you know, when you're not wanting to do all Savvas all the time, is these classroom activities in Desmos. They are student-centered, student-paced. You're just the facilitator. It has that great like snapshots tool where you can stop everyone with the pacing or the pausing of the activity. And then you can facilitate discussion about what you see. They come with a whole teacher guide. Almost every classroom activity has a teacher guide that you can read up beforehand, so you know when to ask questions and what questions to ask. They're just amazing. I wish I was teaching so I could use some more. But if you see one that says bundle, it means there's a ton of them in there. So I'm not a big fan of doing a classroom activity every day, but you could pick one to start, and maybe one in the middle of the topic and one at the end, just to give them something that's focused on them. The polygraphs are fun. Polygraph is like a 20 questions where they play against a random student in the class. It's great for blended learning if you have some kids that are at home, or but it's just like landing a plane. They're just amazing, like modeling. These are modeling like Legos. There's 2 truths and a lie. There's card sorts. There's amazing activities that you could do with those, and some that you could even maybe like physically do the activity with manipulatives. But yeah, there's some.
These are activities that come up when you click on that link that you showed before.
Yeah. So I clicked on this
topic.
Yeah. So they're all mapped out for you already. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go search for your own, but these are the ones that basically we've found work well and that we like. So, but you can just literally search on that Desmos classroom site.
Did you happen to have one of those scavenger hunts for geometry class? I do teach a geometry class. My next door neighbor over here teaches our algebra. So,
okay. I don't, but we could make one because they have that great the geometry Desmos tool.
Right.
Actually, what we do have, let me show you what I've got for Desmos geometry in terms of, close this out so my internet works better. We do have a scavenger hunt for geometry, but it's not like a slide deck one. But I could totally make this into a slide deck for you. So this one is just like a document.
Uh-huh.
So I'll show you this one. It's under that geometry heading. And I did not make this one. This is something from Desmos.
Okay.
But it's a really neat way to use the Desmos geometry tool, which is kind of like GeoGebra. And I actually haven't gone through this enough. I've gone through some of this, but not all of it, but you can take off the solutions. Like you could come in, we could copy this and just take these solutions off, but then we could use them for ourselves later. But it's got a beginner and then an intermediate section. So if you've got advanced kids, you could have them, try these intermediates when you get there, or you could even just give these as little challenges, like a bell ringer or, the beginning of the week, let's do our Desmos geometry challenge, or I can make a slide deck for you that has all that, because I like the slide deck because it gives you a place for the students to house all of their creations.
Yeah.
And then they have it for later. You could even have them type the steps they did, like this one will have, this will show you the solution for it and what it looks like. I love this because it's free. So it'll show, like this one was, what was this one? Given two intersecting lines, I can create a circle centered at the point of intersection. And so you just intersect two lines using this and then put your point at the intersection point. It looks a lot like, it looks very like that was hard, but it's not. It's just got a lot of extra points on there. But yeah,
we've used this in class just a little bit, just as we're getting into this idea of parallel lines and transversals. So we've played around with it just a little bit at this point, but the kids don't have a ton of experience with it yet.
Right. Good. And yeah. And again, like if you come to what topic are you in right now?
We're doing parallel and perpetular lines now on the coordinate plane.
That's topic 2. Okay. So if you go to this geometry topics 1 and 2, it'll show you like where that is in Savvas if you want to assign those specific examples for them to kind of play around with it. And then I put some, like, there's a few like parallel and perpendicular line classroom activities in here as well. So it does hit, like it's got a lot in that first section where it uses the geometry tool in there. So definitely those might be ones. These theorem ones though are just going to kind of show it, but what's really neat is they can manipulate and see, oh, well, it works if I put this over here. And what if I change this? It just gives them a little bit more of the play factor with it and not just here is the theorem. Like, so
and that's what I tried to do with them when we created ours in class. I had them, they were creating their own. We were measuring the angles and noticing how the angles changed or didn't change as we moved it around, that sort of thing.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. And you could even do those scavenger hunt slide decks. You can have your students like physically do things on a piece of paper, hold them up to their Chromebook camera, take a picture of it, and that way you can see many different examples of that same theorem or postulate like happening, so they can say, oh, well, my neighbor, it's a great way. And you can share that deck, have it be like a deck where everyone is using it in your class. Because I'm all about manipulatives. Like I love geometry, like all the hands-on learnings. So yeah, so those might be some things. But definitely I'd love to create maybe that scavenger hunt as that slide deck for you.
Okay.
And I'll send that over to you.
Yeah, because I noticed as you were scrolling through there, some of those things they hit, ring a bell with me. Although that's something I know we'll be getting to later on in the school year. So you're right, like saving some of these constructions and things like that for later as we get to these topics is a good idea.
Yeah, it's a great way to, if they're physically doing things in your classroom, it's a great like journaling, like those slide decks where you can go back and they can just use the same one slide deck that's in their Google Drive. You can have them, open up your theorem journal or open up your geometry journal, and then they can literally see the work they did, last month, 2 months ago. It just gives good retention, I think. And I know in the past 3 years where I haven't been teaching, I know they still don't retain anything.
Yeah.
but yeah, the slide decks can be really helpful. Well, cool. Yeah, so I think I would say maybe even if you're looking for something with like let me send you that right question institute thing real quick. But what else I wanna tell you? There it is.
Now, are there activities like this for the middle school level? Like I also have some 7th and 8th grade classes.
Yes. Okay, let me copy this for you and I will show you. I'll stick that in here. But yeah, we do have a middle school list. Our elementary school specialist and Jill Kidder put this together. And I haven't made it like these yet for the middle school where it's kind of a live document. But if you're in that Desmos, that second link I send you, and you go to middle school, there is a document that is right here. No, that's this one. Shoot. Where did it go to the middle school? There it goes. Sorry. That's right here. It doesn't have live links. It looks like it has live links, but it doesn't have live links on it. But you could take this document and then just type those into the classroom activity. I'll show you how that.
Oh yeah, okay.
How that works, but you could just search for it. But they do have an alignment where they've gone through and look. This is 6th grade, 7th grade. And so let's say I'm in topic 3 and I want to do pondering percent. So then I would come out to myteacher.desmos.com. And I can either type it in here, or I could probably type it in Google too, if it doesn't show up here. Because I don't know if all of those were based out of, but I could do pondering percents and we'll see if it pops up. Okay, it didn't there. So now I'm going to go to Google.
Yeah, that happens to me so often when I try to type something into that search bar in Desmos. I so often get that result right there, and I'm like, where are all these activities that I keep hearing about? And it's hard to find if you type in just a general mathematical idea in there, and nothing seems to come up.
They're doing a better job with adding them, but they're not adding them as quick as we'd like. But if I just go to Google, you can see, like, there it is right there.
Okay.
And actually the teacher guide is also under there. So then searching on Google is sometimes the best, and then it's in there. So this one's pretty neat in terms of percentages. And
there are some
the
good
graphic.
middle school